afternoon and welcome to AIADA's AutoTalk. I'm your host, Rachel Soleimani. Before I introduce today's presenter, a few quick reminders as always. Everyone that is registered for today's program will receive a copy by the end of this week. And if you have any questions, feel free to enter them into the lower right side of your interface under the Q&A bar. Today, we welcome back our good friend, Lisette Gohl, Head of Automotive Retail at Google. Lisette is going to share some insights on forces that are shifting how auto marketers do business. So I'm going to let her do her thing and take it away, Lisette.
I just wanted to first say thank you for having me back for another Auto Talk, Rachel. When I was last here in May, we were speaking about our refreshed Google Dealer Guidebook, and I'm really honored to be back speaking with everybody today. So for those who I have not yet met, I have the honor of leading the auto retail team here at Google. And our team specializes in digital marketing and technology solutions for dealers, for auto groups, for your regions, and for your agencies. And our goal is to provide clarity on how you can best use Google solutions to drive more profitability for your businesses. And if we go to the next slide, today I would like to speak about the disruptors and the opportunities that are reshaping our great industry and share research and insights about 4 core changes that are simultaneously occurring right now. So first, we're going to discuss the inventory shortages that are reshaping consumer behavior and intensifying cross-shopping. And then we'll move into the shopper consideration process for EVs. And as EV adoption grows and shoppers keep their options open, now is a great time to educate consumers. And local franchise dealers have the infrastructure to help demystify the EV ownership experience with community-based retailers being ready to sell, service, finance for the EV solutions today. And then we're going to talk about online retailing. And you've heard me speak about this before, but truly there's no going back to the old way of purchasing vehicles, and dealers play a key role in providing streamlined customer experiences. And then finally, before we close, we're going to spend some time on fixed operations, as we're seeing consumers are more willing now to make investments in the maintenance for their vehicles that they're holding on to. And then before I leave you for the day, we'll talk about actionable best practices that will provide foundational successes across all 4 of these areas so you can streamline your marketing efforts across user experience, data and technology, and media execution. So on the next slide, let's go ahead and dive in first and begin with inventory shortages that are evolving the shopper journey. And on the next slide, we know we're all very aware of the inventory shortages that are affecting our industry, so I won't talk about that today. But because we have had several months' data across this environment, we now have consumer shopping behavior insights that I'm excited to share with you. On the next slide, we'll see our own Google research. And we found that shoppers are evenly split on what they will do if the model that they want is not available to them immediately. And we asked shoppers, when you're ready to buy, what would you do in case your preferred choice of model was not in stock? And what we found was half will wait for it to be back in stock. So half of shoppers are going to wait. And this is consistent with reports that you've likely seen from Auto News, who say that about 48% are choosing to postpone their shopping experience. The other half we're seeing will buy something else within the brand or from a competitor. So that leaves you with 2 immediate strategies: to retain share and to grow share right now. So shoppers who can wait for stock are essentially forced to extend their purchase journey. And if they're willing to wait for one of your vehicles, take the opportunity to retain them as an up and reinforce their choice. So for those who are staying in market, they're forced to reevaluate their choices based on what's available. So we can take this opportunity to showcase what you have to offer, whether that's across new vehicles, used vehicles, or CPO, to get into their consideration set. And I want to share one insight from our research that enables you to approach both retaining and growing shoppers here on the next slide. When we look at our clickstream research, which means that we analyze click behavior, we see that half of all volume shoppers are considering luxury brands, but almost half of luxury shoppers are considering volume brands. And in our yearly Gear Shift study, we dug deeper into this behavior, and we saw that over half of new car buyers considered used or CPO vehicles. In addition, half of new car buyers considered models from a segment other than the one that they actually purchased. So when we look at this data, that means moving from SUVs to cars, trucks to SUV, and other cross-segment shopping. And what I'm seeing come out of this prolonged inventory shortage thus far is that it's accelerating consumer cross-shopping shifts that we saw emerging several years ago. So as an automotive marketer, it's important to embrace the idea that consideration sets are not just the segment that is based in the competitive sets that we tend to view them as, especially when shoppers may not be able to even purchase the models that they originally thought that they were coming to the dealership lots for. So as I close this particular section, I ask you to just take this as an opportunity to be ready when shoppers are looking for the right vehicle now and for months to come until purchase, because they truly are open to influence and open to choice. And next, we'll move into the shopping behavior of the EV segment. So on the next slide, our first data point here, when we're looking at the data of who is considering and buying EVs and PEVs, we see that 12% of automotive shoppers are considering these vehicle types as of the first half of 2021. Now, I will say we did not break out BEVs separately here, but we do have a lot of EV and PEV research to share. So when you see the data on this slide, what we're doing is we're breaking down that 12% of auto shoppers. From that 12%, we then see that 1/3 of those auto shoppers who considered an EV or a PEV actually purchased one. So that's the 4% that you see here on the slide. And even more specifically, about 9% of luxury new car buyers purchased a BEV or a PHEV compared to only about 2.5% of volume new car buyers. So what that means is that your luxury new vehicle buyers are more inclined to look at this segment right now than volume new car buyers. But on the next slide, I want to show you those who are considering EVs and PEVs, they have a larger consideration set than the average new car buyer. Specifically, EV and PEV shoppers are considering 3.8 vehicles on average. And that is compared to the ICE new vehicle buyer who's comparing 2.8 vehicles on average. And we also see that the SUV, CUV, and four-door sedan segments, which you see here in the blue and the gray bars, have the highest consideration set across EV and ICE, with EV being higher. So for those of you who have or will soon have SUVs, CUVs, and four-door sedans to offer, this is a great opportunity to educate and possibly convert ICE shoppers into the EV segment. And a few more insights that we have to share on the next slide. It seems that because the consideration set for EV shoppers is larger than the new vehicle ICE shoppers, and likely also because options are growing, we see that EV considerers are spending more time in the research process. They're spending more time researching overall. And what we see is that over half are spending a month or more researching. And we compared this to the average new car buyer, and that is just under 40%. So under 40% of new car buyers are researching within a month compared to over 50%. And then many of them, and it's actually 77%, are taking 2 weeks to 6 months or longer to research before they actually buy their EV vehicles. And this is compared to 58% for the average new car buyer. So they are in market longer, they are considering more models, segments, and this research and learning process is continuing on because there's a lot more new to the segment. So next on the slide here, I want to start to look at what factors shoppers are considering across the EV segment. First and foremost, you see 75% here. 75% of shoppers are interested in the impact these vehicles bring. So these are aspects such as low or no emissions, noise reduction, promotion of renewable energies, innovation technology, and embracing the future are all important factors here that are in this impact area. Then we look at the benefits of ownership, which are important. So that is features like affordable purchase price, having the purchase partially funded, low maintenance and repair costs, tax advantages, access to city or commuter lanes. These are all parts of the benefit of ownership that shoppers are looking at. And then 54% of shoppers are considering performance and image. Appealing model variants, image, saying that the image aligns with my values, looking at performance, speed and acceleration features, and then the driving experience are all relevant here within this performance and image factor. And then finally, 46% of shoppers are interested in functionality, and 37% are interested in innovative technology. So we're really, for the first time, breaking down what is really influencing shopping across this EV segment here. And on the next slide, we look at what sources the EV shoppers are using to uncover this information. And we find, like other new vehicle shoppers, they're turning primarily to online sources. However, they do differ from a standard new vehicle shopper in that they're using an average of 9.7 sources of online information while researching this vehicle. And this compares to 6.1 with the average new vehicle shopper. So they're very, very active online. And then on the next slide, we see that shoppers also have a lot of questions and concerns regarding EVs as they're gathering all of this information about this emerging vehicle power. So when it comes to why consumers are not considering EV, we do see that range and charging anxiety is still the top reason. This then, though, is followed by technology concerns such as I know too little about the technology, I don't trust the technology, safety concerns, or other people want to wait until the technology is more advanced. And, we looked at this data too by luxury and volume car buyers, given the earlier research that I noted. And we actually don't see much of a difference between luxury and volume new car buyers in these breakouts, except for those raising concern about price, with nearly twice as many volume buyers stating that price is a concern compared to luxury buyers. And then finally, on the next slide, I want to close this section noting that many people considering an EV have actually never experienced one firsthand. We recently surveyed over 400 respondents for this data, and we found that 53% of them replied that they had never driven or ridden in an electric vehicle. So they're truly exploring this with an open mind, possibly for the first time in their ownership journey. And these last two slides, I think, showcase the immediate and significant opportunity you have as auto marketers, regardless of, OEM or dealer, to educate shoppers about the value of EVs, BEVs, and PEVs as this push to increase sales of these vehicles ramps up over the next few years. Next, I'm going to talk quickly about online retailing, because with all of the acceleration we have seen over the past 18 months, I'm excited to share a few new insights with you. First, though, before I go in, I want to say that we're seeing that your customer is demanding a new way to buy. They are in control, and they demand the experience is frictionless from research to purchase. And what that means is that full completion of the transaction, just like your buyers really have with every other purchase right now, is important. And over the years, we've watched technology shift power away from traditional retail models and into the hands of customers. So the phones that we all have in our hands are really becoming the remote control of people's lives. And with a few clicks and swipes, your customers have learned that they have the ability to demand things differently. And so before we dive into the research, I want to just give you a very timely real-life example of this. So I'm currently in the process of renovating our home, and we're buying big ticket items from kitchen appliances and cabinets to paint and accessories, either entirely online or through a hybrid model of both online and offline. And I wanted to bring this forward because it's mirroring what we're seeing happening in auto sales right now. So personally for me, I'm really comfortable doing my research and shopping online, but with all of these purchases happening at the same time, I've visited a lot of different website experiences, and some of them are really frictionless and easy, and others are timely and frustrating. And then by the time my research is completed online, I already know what model that I'm looking for. But when I need to go to the store to make that actual purchase for a kitchen appliance, for an example, they weren't ready for me, and they would only service me if I had an appointment. And the salesperson walked me through the entire sales pitch to review models that I already knew I didn't want. So what was the outcome for me? It was a poor customer experience, and for the salesperson at the store, it was a waste of that salesperson's time. So whether it's an appliance or a vehicle, the customer really is in the driver's seat today. And I wanted to illustrate this because customer service from the Google perspective is coming down to delivering a frictionless experience and meeting our customers' expectations. And I have the pleasure of speaking with many of you on a regular basis. And I think I'm not saying anything you don't already know and spend a lot of time thinking about, but the last 18 months have accelerated consumer expectations in the long run. And so whether or not we're providing an online retailing option or otherwise, it's not something that we're debating. We're just really moving into the how so that we can meet these expectations of the customer. So now let's go into the next slide and I'll show a little bit of research on what we're actually seeing happen in the data. So this is why the how is so important right now. Even within currently limited inventory environments that we're in, new car buyers continue to show their openness to purchasing a vehicle online. In the first half of last year, 10% of new vehicles were sold took place entirely online end to end. And to provide context as to why that's notable, that number was only 1% just in 2018. So we saw a 9% jump in just 2 years. And on this next slide here, what you'll see is that search interest in buying a car online has increased to record highs in 2021. What you see here are indexed search trends for keywords around interest in buying a car online. And you're going to see a pronounced increase from January to April 2021 with a spike in the month of April. Now from there, we've settled really into a new normal of search interest for online purchases. It's higher than we've seen in the past, and if you look over time, it's really becoming sustainable. So on the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about how we can understand and meet consumer expectations, as I spoke about how that is really important in order to deliver the experiences. As we're transitioning into an online retailing first industry, we know there's a need to move through the transition of a painful buying process together and become an industry that's really empowering the consumer. Consumers are feeling, they're reporting that they feel overwhelmed, that they want to bring more of the process online. They want guidance to help them pick the right vehicle that's specifically the right one for them. And so for us to continue on this transformative journey, I put together a few questions that we can start to ask to move ourselves into the mindset. So the first one is, how can automakers and dealers evolve their relationship to empower the consumer? And how can we streamline the purchase journey to bring joy to our customers rather than the stress that they're reporting? And in a world of endless choices and distractions, how can we make it easier for auto shoppers to find the information that they want? And then finally, how can we delight them with experiences in a way that increases customer satisfaction and loyalty in the long run? So now I'm going to move to our fourth trend that we're seeing. This is our fourth and final trend to watch, which is around fixed operations. And on the next slide, in my discussions with many of you in the dealer community, we know that fixed ops can represent as much as half of overall profit for dealerships. And with today's low inventory and greater demands that the owners have on their current vehicles, now really is a great time to focus on marketing investment in fixed ops to grow this part of the business and keep your customers coming back. So first, before we dive into the data, I wanted to just highlight a few major themes that are calling for greater emphasis on fixed ops marketing, despite all the other things that are happening in the industry right now. First of all, the chip shortage has inflated prices, as you all know, for new and used vehicles. The average new car prices have reached $42,000, and used vehicle prices have risen 45% over the last 12 months. And we also see that the average age of vehicles on U.S. roads continues to increase, and that is now reaching a record of 12.1 years of ownership, which is a record high. Then we see that folks that have put off servicing their cars during the lockdown are really now seeing long wait times at garages across the country because they're all getting ready to go back to work and back to commuting. And so there's a backlog of service orders and pent-up demand. And then we know that fixed ops engagement with customers can be a good vehicle acquisition strategy to increase used car inventory as well. And then finally, after the sales experience, a customer's maintenance and service experience does rank high in influencing automotive brand loyalty. And I think this is one just to underscore a little bit. With competition intensifying over the next few years with upcoming launches, your ability to retain customers is more important than ever. So it's against this backdrop that we've developed new research on fixed ops that I'm excited to share with you today. So let's look at this next slide. First, what we're going to do here on this slide is look at the parts landscape. So I'm going to break this up into the different areas of fixed operations with parts first. And what we see here is that just over half, 57% to be specific, of parts were purchased at a physical parts retailer. Only 10% were purchased at a dealership, but over 1/4 of all parts purchased were bought online. And that has increased from 17% when we conducted this research in 2018. And then when we look in the online segment specifically, half of all parts purchased online were bought on Amazon. So that makes Amazon the #1 online retailer for car parts. Hedges and Company is estimating that they have about $10 billion in sales in 2020 in car parts. And then that's followed by retail chain websites like AutoZone, Walmart, and eBay at 16%. So our survey respondents showed us that dealerships are getting a low share of vehicle parts sales and appear to be a little bit of an afterthought for these parts purchasers. So I think this provides a great opportunity to build your brand and your product awareness online if you have the ability to promote your parts inventory online. And we do also know that the top influencing factor determining where people buy their parts is price. So as a dealership, you can focus on letting your customers know that you have all their parts needs, educate them on the value of the OEM branded parts recommendations, and this can all be done through your online marketing. Next, I want to move into service. Over half of customers are sticking to one location for service, and that is the location that they purchased their vehicle. However, what we saw come through in this research is that they are open to switching to another service location. So growing your customer service base is key to both short and long-term profitability to keep that customer in your brand family. If the competition has the right mix of messaging around price and reputation, it's possible that you could be open to losing your most loyal customers who are choosing you because they bought the vehicle from you. And right now, a huge group of your most loyal customers, 74% in fact, are loyal to you because you sold a vehicle to them. And that's fantastic. But what we saw too is that over 30% of that same group of loyal customers said that they would consider taking their business somewhere else. So I think you have an immediate opportunity to diversify where you're gaining customers outside of a past sale if you're not doing so already. And if you're focusing on fixed ops as it relates to your current customers, I think we can widen that net a little bit to bring more people into your dealership. And then finally, this indicates that we have a really strong opportunity to retain those customers who are relying on you and your technicians to service their vehicles. And we can increase messaging. This is a great place to talk about the merits of your service centers. Next, I want to move into DIY. So we're actually looking at the segment of the population that label themselves as do-it-yourself service customers. There's a lot of money being spent on DIY parts online today, and this is reflected even when I look at the Amazon spend. So we also see that 75% of these DIY parts purchasers are feeling a sense of urgency when they're purchasing their parts. This means that the research process is faster. So we have to build brand awareness with our customers before they run into an issue and they feel panicked. And the great news with DIY customers is that they're more open to working with service centers than it might seem on the surface. So while many of their challenges are due to unforeseen damage or part failures, creating that urgency, 4 out of 10 of these DIYers are open to taking their issues to a service center to handle. So this is a significant opportunity to grow your fixed ops business and pulling over these savvy DIY customers and using them and building your brand loyalty with them at the same time. And while the most important factor for selecting a service center is quality of work and prior service experience, the most important factor for a DIY parts customer is price. So if you can message both, your dealership will be especially enticing to these potential customers who need to find your skilled technicians to complete the work for them. Next, I want to turn our attention to the vehicle enthusiast audience. On this slide, we will talk about, when we talk about vehicle enthusiasts, these are people who are regularly working with after-sales mods to enhance their own vehicle style and performance. And what we see is that they follow the latest automotive developments and they're not against investing in vehicles beyond the necessary maintenance. We found that like your typical parts and service customer searches the top source for researching modifications, beating even word of mouth from family or friends. And they will also visit general automotive websites and video websites to research their needs. So even when reaching out to enthusiasts, search and online video is the best way to get in front of them at the moment that they're interested in furthering those passion projects. So for this audience, if you have a robust parts center, make sure you have an always-on parts search strategy. And then if you want to further drive awareness or expertise of your dealership, consider filming your service bay teams for tips and tricks that you could share with this audience and build a relationship. On the next slide, I wanted to just touch on EVs a little bit with the lens of fixed operations. And overall here, what we're seeing with EVs and fixed ops is that more research and education is needed in the marketplace. So our research shows that 58% of respondents said that they are unfamiliar with what maintenance and service will look like if they bought an EV. And many, 61% in fact, actually perceive the cost of EV servicing to be more expensive than what they are accustomed to. So I think as we're learning more about this space and you have expertise in this domain, this is really a huge opportunity to redefine your relationships with customers and delivering that superior customer experience. As EV adoption is continuing to increase, you're going to stand to be their go-to resource for empowering all aspects of their ownership experience, and then also creating future opportunities for parts, accessories, service, and referrals that will come down the road. Overall, if you have information to provide your customers on your YouTube channel is a great place to put that, but they're just looking for information right now. And on the next slide, now that we have reviewed the trends that we saw as recently as the Q1 of this year, I wanted to discuss how these customers are researching online specifically and what you can do right now to bring them into your dealership. So we've looked at the different audience segments, and now when we look at their online behavior, what we see is that 62% of all fixed op shoppers say that they are using an online resource in their research. 30% of them are saying that they use search as their top research tool. And this can be Google, Bing, or another search engine. And Google search is not only the most used online research resource for parts and service, but it's also the first resource that people go to for both parts and service. And it's also the last source customers go to before making that parts and service purchase at the end. Beyond search, service center and dealer websites, general auto sites, and parts entire websites were the most frequently used, all at 17%. So we've known the importance of search for many years in the vehicle shopping space, but it does hold true for fixed ops as well. Search is the best platform to reach both parts and service shoppers online. And here on the next slide, which is probably one of my favorites, I wanted to share that we have been looking at search demand seasonality across fixed ops categories for several years now. What we have found is that they are highly consistent each year. So for example, we see search demand for batteries increasing every January. But what we also see is that more people are using search every year as this trend line is increasing. And even during the pandemic, with all of the disruptions we had in our industry, almost all of these fixed operations segments remain fairly consistent in terms of search demand, and they're really predictable when we look at seasonality. And I think this is really important as you're planning, for parts orders, you're planning for service increases. What we see is that search seasonality, because it's so predictable here, it can help you plan ahead. It can help you understand when people are needing specific parts and service, and it can help you and across dealership processes and your OEM parts orders. It can help you know when to heavy up advertising, and then even what types of service should be a focus on in your service lane. So the last thing I want to just say about this slide is that really explicitly, we have seen over time that search is predictive of sales. And so understanding and tracking this data for your own dealerships, your own business, in addition to understanding that we see predictability here, will help you understand and anticipate what your customers' service and parts needs are going to be in these key categories. And then moving on to the next slide. I mentioned earlier that DIY audiences are engaged with video and general automotive DIY information. And on this slide, what you see here is the blue bar is total respondents, the red bar is service, and the yellow is parts. When we look at a lot of data on this slide, but I'll pull this out for you. People who are also watching videos created by service centers, and they're watching video reviews on parts that they're looking to purchase. The participants in this study told us that they took direct action from watching those videos, and those actions included searching for more information, scheduling appointments, and visiting a retail store. So video education is a large influencer for people who are feeling confident to take action on their parts and service needs. What we see here is that they are using video to learn about their problems. They're using it to validate what actions they should take next. And they're really asking, things like, well, what's going on under the hood? What am I paying for? Can I do this myself? And research is happening online. It's happening through YouTube for video. And that's where specifically people are researching their vehicle service and parts needs. 72% of respondents said that they use YouTube to watch an auto, parts, or service video. So there's a lot of content on parts and service on YouTube. And when your shoppers are going to YouTube, almost half of them are reporting that the video is influencing their purchase decision. And then finally, I'm just going to close us out because I covered a lot of ground, and I want to go to this final next slide here, just to re-illustrate these 4 areas that we're seeing influencing shopping behavior, and then give you a couple of things that you can do today with all of this data. So just to recap us, we're seeing that shopping behavior right now is being influenced by inventory shortages, the EV evolution, online retailing, and fixed operations. And the great news is there are 3 core things that you can do today that are going to set you up for success across all of these accelerations at once so that you can address them holistically and then focus on the actions that are really going to drive success for your business regardless of the auto evolution that I touched on. These are powerful fundamentals, and if you've heard me speak before, these might sound familiar to you because they are so foundational and important. So first, I want to talk about focusing on the user experience. Their first impression of you is your digital showroom. So focus on site performance, your digital storefront, and an easy online shopping experience. Next, when activating your Google Media, use the power of automation to reach vehicle shoppers where they are, as their purchase and ownership journeys are becoming longer, they're becoming more complex, and there are multiple options and new segments available to them. Automation is going to help you stay ahead of that behavior so that you're not manually trying to catch up with it within your own campaigns. And then third, lean into your robust data that you have available to you. You all have such a wealth of it, and you can measure performance across new used fixed apps, across online and your hybrid omni-channel researchers. And here I want to say It's important to not assume that the metrics that previously mattered to you online are the only ones that still do, because the shopping journey is changing and you have a lot of new online retailing tools on your website. So it's important to understand your profitability expectations here and establish your own return on ad spend goals so you can test and learn. At the end of the day, we want your media to be driving more profitability for you than it has in the past. And then finally, you can find details on how to do this, how to speak with your providers, and how to act, all within our free downloadable Google Dealer Guidebook. And you can find our guidebook at thinkwithgoogle.com by searching Dealer Guidebook. It's going to have everything you need to implement these best practices and more today. Finally, I just want to close out with a big thank you. Thank you to all of you for tuning in. Thank you to Rachel and the AIADA team for the opportunity to speak with you today about all this new research that we have. And I think we have a time for Q&A, if that's right, Rachel.
Since we're having a little bit of technical difficulties in the beginning and now, I am actually going to say if you have any questions, you can email them to me and I will pass them and your information on to Lisette to answer for you. Thank you to everyone on the line for bearing with us through these technical difficulties. We were able to get Lisette on and the presentation going. So thank you again, Lisette, for joining us. Google's at the forefront of all of this, and it's always interesting to hear what's going on over there. So thank you. Again, to everyone on the line, you'll be receiving a copy of this webinar by the end of this week. Join us back here Tuesday, November 9th at 2 p.m. Eastern as Moss Adams discusses proposed new changes and tax codes. For more information about AIADA, visit aiada.org. Thanks for joining us and have a great day, everyone.